What's up, guys? Welcome back to the MMA Latest News Daily. I am Matthew Wells for MMA Latest News. Today, I have part 2 of my interview with Johny Hendricks, and he talks about a pretty controversial topic in MMA right now, and that is the state of MMA judging. It's something that's affected a lot of his recent fights and other big fights in the welterweight division as well. He gives me his thoughts on Robbie Lawler versus Carlos Condit, how he scored that fight, and how he thinks judging will affect his future fights as well. Check it out. Carlos Condit and Robbie Lawler go at it. How did you score that fight?
Yeah, that was a tricky one. You know, people say that you got to beat the champ to win the belt. Yeah, you can take some criticism to that. You know, I know people don't like hearing it, but they think I whine or whatever. But, you know, I look at my fight and I'm like, he didn't clearly beat me. Right. You know, it was close, but I outstruck him.
Right.
I had the belt. I outstrike somebody. How do you lose a fight? And again, you go back to Carlos Condit, he was outstriking him. You know, I was amazed whenever I saw like the way that they had it scored. They only had Carlos outstriking by like 5 shots, you know, or 10 shots. Again, Robbie always finds a way to win. You know, that's one thing that he always does, and he has done that. When I look at that, I go, okay, Carlos sort of stole my game plan. You know, what did I do to Robbie both times? Kickboxed him. You know, move. He can't hit me. You know, move. Bam, bam, bam. The second fight, I thought he did better than I did in the first fight. And I think he's tried to steal that game plan until the 5th round. 5th round, I'm like, don't get knocked out. You don't lose this fight. He fell into his trap. You know, he wanted to bang. And as soon as you fall in that trap, you got to start leaning more towards Robbie because Robbie has the power. And, you know, don't get me wrong, Carlos does too. I fought them both. I felt both their powers. But if I was going to say anybody, I would probably say Robbie has a little bit more than Carlos.
There's some of your most recent fights, you know, judging has come down to the wire, and it's been, you know, controversial decisions,
Yeah.
You know, left and right. So does that play into your mindset going into this fight and future fights, or?
It does, but then again, it can't. You know, because like I said, you know, I might hit you as hard as I can. It wobbles you, okay. I might not be able to put you down on your back. You know what I mean? I might not be able to hurt you. I might not be able to knock you out. Guess what? You didn't make it to the top 10 by getting knocked out. And you can't finish every fight, as we're seeing. Sometimes you have to rely on the judges, that they see it the right way, that they see everything, you know. And that's why I've always said it, what if we put the judges in a room, you know, 3 separate rooms, and right after the score they send in their score, you know, so they don't hear the crowd. They have somebody from the UFC that's in their room with them. They're watching the fight. They you know, I mean, they can't take their eye off this computer screen. And then right after every round, they type in how they scored it, they send it, and at that point, it's in the computer system, and then they print it out. You know, like I said, then the crowd's not, because, you know, sometimes a kick hits, and it sounds like it may not do anything, but the crowd goes, ooh, that could play into a factor. You know, you hit somebody hard, and it doesn't make a sound, and you see them sort of stumble back, and the crowd doesn't really notice that. That could play into a factor. You know what I mean? So that's why I was like, what if we just took the judges out of it, out of the environment, put them in their own room, have somebody watching over them, so they know they're watching the fight, and whenever they score it, boom, 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 they hit send. Or you could put 2 in each room, 2 judges and 1 UFC representative. They both have to agree, hey, that was a 10-9 round. Send it in. Now, if one judge, if they can't get to it, they have to agree within that minute. And at that minute, they agree, they send it in.
What do you think about the 10-point must system? I mean, do you think that's a fair system to use for mixed martial arts, considering how complex the sport is?
Yeah, I do, because you have to have something. You know, you can't sit there and say an 8-8 round, you know, or a 9-8 round. You know what I mean? Because you're still 1 point off. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So what you want to do is you just have to, you know, I guess what there needs to be is not really an understanding, but a sort of a structure. I guess it is an understanding of, like, okay, you know, this is sort of how we see takedowns. Every judge is going to be sort of the same across the board, you know, where they sit here and say, all right, if you take somebody down, who cares? If you do damage, all right. Well, no, we'll recognize that. All right, if you take somebody down, you just lay on them, don't throw any punches, then okay. You know what I mean? You're holding them. We'll give you a point because you're able to hold them down for so long, but you know what I mean? You're not doing any damage. Are you going for submissions? This. You know, and that's the thing, though. You have submissions. What if a guy's holding the guy down and he's got him in a submission? He's not doing any damage, but he's still got him held down. You know, how do you score that? Whenever you watch a fight, sometimes I'm like, that punch didn't hit. You know, I can see that because, you know, I'm trained to fight. I'm trained that way. So I'm looking at that. He moved his head out of the way, or that barely missed. That was a glancing blow. I'm really not going to count that as high as, oh my gosh, okay, that hit. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? So, like, I understand how fighting is, and I understand what shots matter and what shots don't. Where, you know, a lot of the guys we have are boxers. You know, they've been boxing judges for 20 years now. You know what I mean? So, a glancing blow to them is still can be devastating because they have bigger gloves, right? And so that's sort of the way that my mind's been working is like, okay, how could you make judging easier and better, and also maybe even hire some guys that did fight. You know, sit there and say, hey, let's see how you judge this fight. You know, we have it judged this way. We already know what's going to get scored. That's really not a controversial one, but yet it's sort of close. It could go either way, and sit down and get some guys that have done MMA.
There you have it, guys. I think Johnny's got some pretty good ideas to change MMA judging. What do you think? Leave your comments below and let me know what you would do differently to change the judging in MMA. I think it's something that needs to happen sooner rather than later, considering the effect that the judges' scorecard has on these fights. You look at TJ Dillashaw versus Dominic Cruz, not one single judge had the same score at the end of that fight. It's something that needs to be addressed. The 10-point must system, in my opinion, is not something that can be used for MMA. It's too complex of a sport. Be sure to tune in tomorrow for part 3 of this interview where Johnny shares some pretty funny stories that you don't want to miss. Hit the thumbs up, hit subscribe. Until tomorrow, peace, SYF.